could we say, braces itself for the second State of the Nation address under the Government of National Unity. The South African Local Government Association, that's SALGA, is hoping that tomorrow's speech addresses challenges faced by municipalities across the country. Let's talk to SALGA President Bheke Stofile for more. Bheke, good morning to you. Thank you very much. I think, it's safe to say, based on reports that we've seen, and you and I have chatted before about this, our municipalities are in crisis, whether it comes to managing finances or ensuring that there is consistent service delivery. There is a problem. How does that shape the call that you make to the President?
Thank you very much, Iman. Once again, greetings to you and to your listeners. We're really looking forward to the coming State of the Nation address. And what we expect is the President to take from where he left in the last State of the Nation address, where he made a commitment that they will then work in terms of turning local government around and will partner with local government in addressing the systemic challenges that local government has been exposed to over many, many years. The white paper review and the funding model, and we expect him to unpack the collaborative method, because we believe that we have made sufficient argument that if you look into the Constitution, there are three distinct spheres of government that are interrelated, and they are expected to collaborate and coordinate their activities in making an impact insofar as service delivery is concerned to community. So we expect that to be unpacked even further, because the economy is not growing, and the most sufferer in the process is the local government and the households generally in the country. And how can we then partner with regard to resolving that issue? The issue that I think we have just spoke about with regard to water challenges, the aging infrastructure, and that requires a significant focus from government as a whole in dealing with the challenges that communities are facing. And we are expecting him to also unpack how will they contribute as a national government in cutting the invisible hand that it disadvantage municipalities to perform their duty. So we've got a number of expectations in unpacking from the last State of the Nation.
And you and I spoke extensively about cutting the invisible hand, and our viewers can go and watch that interview a little bit later on. But I want us to move from high level to ground level. Bheke, honestly, give us examples of this collaboration, because you talked about, that you're expecting the President to explain the collaboration that they meant to have with local municipalities. But we should have been seeing it already, because we're already at crisis point. I mean, take the Coronationville or the Westbury communities, whether you're talking about crime or whether you're talking about water, we can even just leave it around water. We're not seeing that translate into action. We're not seeing that translate into a break in the historical patterns of dysfunction when it comes to service delivery. So why should we expect anything from this administration?
No, we should expect many things in the administration, more in particular in the leadership that we have at the national government level. Let's go back. What is meant by collaboration? For instance, let's take an issue of water, issue of crime, issue of mafia operations, which requires safety and security cluster or justice cluster to deal with it. Where the municipal infrastructure, government infrastructure, literally have been vandalized. You need collaborations of a particular form with the law enforcement and the instrument, so that they then catch those that are vandalizing, those that are committing criminality, and then be arrested. That's one part. There's a second part. I think earlier on we had a discussion with the Deputy Minister of Water. The challenge of water is the challenge that it affects the society as a whole, and we need a partnership where the technical capability, I've said at one point to Mgambi in the interview, the hollowing out of the municipal skill set, it has been a deliberate policy choice of government. And then therefore, you need, because we must understand that over a period of time, we have invested in hollowing out the skills by putting tender processes in the process. And in that process, you hollowed and took the skill out of a municipality. We need that skill, because if you claim that the water department, it has the skill, you've got a former engineering communities that are staying at home. How do we then bring that skill to municipalities to turn and
Bheke, I'm going to
make
stop
sure
you
that
there.
the service
Bheke,
is given?
I want to stop you there, and I'll tell you why. Again, because, you know, we're hearing similar things as we've heard before. The reality is, when we wake up, there is no power. The reality is, when we do our audits, the local municipalities are not meeting their audit targets. You can look anywhere across any municipality, maybe barring a few exceptions, and there are deep, deep problems. Your very existence as SALGA is about protecting municipal interests, but more importantly, strengthening local government, helping the local councils deliver services. I mean, just based on what we're hearing, and I can hear everything that you're saying, SALGA has failed, Bheke. SALGA is failing to do what it's supposed to do. And you can blame a number of different things, the hollowing out, et cetera, need for partnerships. I'm just expressing this frustration because it's so real, and it's real for communities, not today, not 2 years ago, but for 10 years plus. Think Hammanskraal, think, Coronationville, think Westbury. Have you just failed as SALGA?
Yeah, I think that is just a blind blame that SALGA has failed, because it doesn't give a sufficient evidence to indicate that, because your issue that you're talking about is a failure of the system, it's not a failure of SALGA. And if you read the Organized Local Government Act, it determines what is the role of SALGA. The role of SALGA is to lobby, which is what we are doing. We are lobbying government to do more. To fund the municipalities more, because we understand what are the financial and the administrative and political interface challenges. And we're lobbying them that you must do things differently. We are lobbying the government that you must improve the audit processes. And that is why we influence the discussions insofar as the amendment of the Auditor General's Act, so that we tighten the hand of auditing. It's a SALGA's influence, because it's enshrined in law. That's the role of SALGA. The second issue is that SALGA, it must then involve on the negotiations and create stability, so that there is a service delivery that is rendered by municipalities. And that is why we enter into collective bargaining council and have an engagement. So that is the work of SALGA. How it has happened, it's because the government in different spheres, it had to be pulled together in the collaborative space. And that is our function. And we are doing that very well. And that is why we are hearing Deputy Minister of Water is saying, in collaboration with municipalities, we can then turn the tide. And that is the work of SALGA.
Yeah, I mean, and we heard David Mahlobo saying that that's the Deputy Minister that you're referring to. And we can say that all we like, and we can show visuals of him visiting the Rooiwal water treatment plant, which we shared with our viewers earlier. But if the taps in Hammanskraal cannot produce clear drinking water for the local community, and I'm using that because they've stood out in terms of deaths from cholera, in terms of horrible water that emits from their taps. We can talk about these partnerships, but it boils down to what the lived experience of South Africans across South Africa ultimately is, especially those with historic issues. And I can appreciate, as you say, this is your mandate as SALGA, that you have limited authority, and you've called for more teeth effectively to be able to do the work that you are doing. But something is not working, whether you say you're doing the advocacy, whether you are supporting capacity building, you're fighting the system yourself. Something has got, would you agree, Bheke, that something has got to change? I mean, even if you're sticking to the rules for the reason for why you exist, and you're doing all of the things you say you're supposed to be doing, the lived experience is saying whatever you're doing between yourselves and national government, it's not working. Something must give, something has to change, right?
Yeah, no. Of course, there are two things that we need to look at. You cannot rule out the importance of partnership, irrespective that you have so much fight amongst yourselves. But for any nation to succeed, it has succeeded only by forging partnership that had value. And the value is to change the life of ordinary citizens. And that is what all of us, we are committed. But how does this partnership take shape is a different story. And it must be coming out of the different efforts that are engaged by all those that involved in government. That's one issue. One thing that you don't know, unfortunately, you are not talking about, is the role of SALGA in lobbying the political parties, because SALGA is not contesting elections. Political parties contest elections. Political parties identify people to be councillors. Now we are lobbying them to say people that you are sending to council, it must be people of this caliber so that you can make a change in the local government system. As you are making change in the local government system, you need to make change at bottlenecks. You must remove them at other spheres of government, because those bottlenecks doesn't allow the processes of collaborations so that we are impactful into service delivery as the demand that is expected out of us. So I'm saying those are the issues that we are dealing with, and we will continue dealing with them because that's what we are formed, so that the government as a single unit, it must respond. And I don't think they believe that we are not doing any difference. I mean, look in the electricity. In the electricity, it affects the community. Of course, in the current debate now, is the quantum charge into households. There's a debate that we're having. But we have been fighting and having a debate about load shedding and say this can't be, because it affects the service delivery. And at least you are seeing the move that part from the Minister of Electricity and Energy.
I get it, Bheke, and I think perhaps it is, you know, it's maybe a question for what is the reason for SALGA's existence if it can only advise and it can only collaborate. You can't enforce, you can't really do much more than what you're doing. As you say, your hands are tied. People need to understand and separate what you can and cannot do. Maybe we need something different in place of SALGA, because we need that ability to be able to hold local councillors to account. We need to be able to train them better. They need to be able to execute better so that residents have a better lived experience in their everyday lives. And maybe that's a question we can entertain going forward. But we always appreciate your time and your availability. Thanks for being with us this morning. Bheke Stofile